Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining today. I thought I would just try to sneak in another live this afternoon. Well, it's actually still morning here in Melbourne, but hopefully I thought I could catch a few other people who might be online here over in the States. I know last night I did a bit of a stream. It went quite well with the scene of Melbourne, but today I want to give myself a challenge. And I'm just trying to adjust everything. Can you let me know how the video and audio is going? For those of you watching on Facebook and YouTube, just let me know if you can hear and you can see everything okay. Yeah, just before I go ahead and get started. And yeah, basically, today what I'm going to be doing is painting this rainy day street scene. I've got the paper actually turned the wrong way. It's landscape like this. And this is a tricky little scene that I found the reference photo for probably a few months ago, and I was thinking, I don't know if I want to give this a go. This is just, there's so much going on, kind of doing my head in just looking at the reference. But I thought I'd use this opportunity also to teach you some watercolor techniques. So basically some wet on wet watercolor techniques and wet on dry watercolor techniques, and show you how to paint this all, hopefully in a quick, loose kind of manner. And I've got a general idea of how to approach this scene, but the first thing we want to do is start off with the drawing. So let's go ahead and get started. I do see there's a bunch of you over on YouTube and on Facebook, so I hope you can, let me know if the audio and video is okay. We've got Cubs Win as well, and we also have Angie in the chats. Good to see you both. And we've got Carol Underwood also says, see and hear great. Okay, fantastic. And yeah, do me a favor as well, like the video, share it around. I haven't actually advertised this thing. I haven't advertised this workshop at all. I just decided to go live. Angie says, speech sounds like you're in a race. Am I talking a bit too quickly maybe? Or it could be the stream. Sometimes it buffers and it will sometimes come all at once. But let's go ahead and get started, everyone. So I've got the reference picture up on the left-hand side of the screen, so you can generally follow along. But just, I think if you just follow my pencil marks, we should be okay. I don't want you to just hyperfixate on the details. Okay, just at the general scene and the pattern of light and dark. Okay, so let's firstly put in the horizon line. So this is the area right at the back of the scene that you can see where the buildings kind of touch the ground. And I'd say it's not in the center of the scene. It's just a bit below. And I wouldn't even say it's a third of the way. It's about a little bit more than the third of the way through the paper. Okay, so I want to give it just a little bit more, kind of like here. And the reason why is so we can get those reflections onto the ground, a bit more kind of obvious reflections. And today, everyone, I'm using some hot press watercolor paper, which makes it very difficult to execute a lot of these techniques. I want to challenge myself a bit, and I really like the effect of hot press watercolor paper as well, because it is just so vibrant when you get those colors on. You'll see what I mean later, but the disadvantage of using hot press is that it's very hard to get wet and wet techniques. Things dry funny, and there's pools of paint here and there. So yeah, stick with me and we'll go from there. Cubs Win says, I found you recently and appreciate your style and teaching. That's awesome. I've really good to have you on the channel as well. And if you have questions and things that you're not sure of, maybe if I'm not explaining something in enough detail, just let me know. And I'm always happy to go through that live. And so, like I said, we're starting off putting in this line here. This is so important, this line, because if you don't get this in correctly, then okay, if you have it too high, the buildings, there's not going to be enough space for the buildings. If you have it too low, then you're going to have basically no reflections. So we need to kind of balance that out. Make sure you get this one right, okay? So, not the middle part of the scene, but just below the middle part of the paper. That should be okay. All right. Now, all these buildings in the background, they may look really intimidating, but we can simply reduce them down to one big shape. Okay, look at this. This building here in the back. It's just a big shape coming down. You know, I'm kind of making a few more jut out, that kind of thing there. Okay, I think there's a car here. It might be turning, I don't know. It looks like there could be a car or something like that, just all the way in the distance. I don't care. It's just a basic car. Okay, maybe a car. I don't even know what that is. Is this New York? I've no idea. I've never been to New York, but to me, it's just like the yellow cabs, everything like that. Just reminds me of somewhere in the States, maybe New York. But let me know. I'm sure some of you from the States would know. And Angie says, watercolor paper, I have, will that work? Yep, watercolor paper will work, Angie. Any watercolor paper will do. I always suggest for newbies to pick up cold press watercolor paper, because that's the easiest, I'd say. Yeah, it's the easiest to work on. All right, because the paint just spreads, the paint just disperses more easily, okay, compared to hot press paper like I've got here. Some people do use cellulose paper. I don't mind that from time to time when sketching, but again, for beginners, it is tricky to paint on that paper, because 100% cotton paper is the best stuff that I'd recommend. And if you can get it in your country, always aim for that. Okay, so we've got these buildings out in the back, and for the most part, these buildings are going to be a silhouette. And it's an interesting sort of scene. Actually, what's the deal with hang on, give me a second. Let me just increase the size of this reference. Yeah. So what's happening here is that my paper is actually longer. It's actually a decent amount longer than the reference. So I'm going to need to alter this building, and I actually think this is a positive, because it means that I can get in potentially more sky. But some of these buildings to the left are going to probably and right are going to look a touch elongated. Doesn't matter, but sometimes you need to adjust for these kind of things. I haven't got the proportions, the size of the paper 100% correct. But, it's the same thing with references. A lot of the time you just have to make do with what you have in front of you, and alter the reference and make it look better. So here's another building. Look, just on the side, it's kind of just like the side of a building there. And the rest of it, let's have a look. We've got this big sort of building that just comes out of the scene like that. I might actually, again, this is a funny sort of scene, because I have got a bit of paper that's a little bit longer, but we'll make do. Some of the buildings look a touch elongated, but we'll give it a shot anyway. And let's have a look. Yeah, cold Friday evening, and it's actually real hot today in Melbourne. So it's going to reach about 30. I've got the aircon on. Cubs Wins saying, do you use coloured pencils? I don't really use coloured pencils. I just don't have the patience for them, just to spend time and more than a couple of hours on something. And I find with coloured pencils, you just need that patience. I used to be really focused on getting highly detailed, on highly detailed drawings when I was in my early 20s or before that. I just can't hack it anymore, and I enjoy the feeling of and the excitement of just trying to work something out quickly on the go, even if it's imperfect, but having this sort of this excitement of not knowing what exactly is going to happen. Okay. But when it does work out, and especially if you use this same process that I've been talking about for a while, it usually does work out. It usually does work out. Okay, so we've got that. I'm just trying to emphasize that car a little bit. Now in the background, we've got more cars, and you can see them all just in the distance like that. And the big thing is that I'm trying to get in a few of these cars that maybe overlap over the top of each other like this, and the back ends of these cars as well. As you can see, I'm trying to just go a little bit darker, and I hope this will help also for some of you who always say that my drawings are too light, and it's very difficult to see here on the camera what's going on. But I hope you can draw a little bit darker, especially the bottoms of the cars there. That's going to help. yeah, it's an interesting scene because overcast, it's rainy, you know, the light is really just coming from the sky, but then with some of the cars and stuff like this one here, right in the center of the scene. I really love this one here. Let's try to get this one in. So we've got the couple of circles for the wheels on the underside of the cab. Let's have a look here. That's like the side of the car. We've got the back here. I'm making this car a little bit larger as well. I like it. And on the top of it, you can see there's this kind of, you know, it's a taxi. So you got this kind of, whatchamacallit, sign on top of the car like that. You know, that's the windscreen. You've got some lights. We can take advantage of these lights and try to get some nice little reflections going on afterwards. Okay, but, you know, always look at the car, look at it and just think, what shapes are in this car? We've got circles, we've got, you know, trapezoidal kind of shapes here, you know. Look at the angles of the lines and draw them in. I don't want to spend too much of this workshop just going through the drawing and how I'm doing it, but more sort of go through the techniques, how we get this sort of wet and wet effect in. But yeah, in the last workshop, if you want to know how to simplify buildings and simplify shapes down, cars down, you can check out my previous workshop. I do go through that in a lot more detail. But yeah, this is the probably one of the most important parts, just getting in this taxi. And you can notice underneath the car there is a bit of you can see that there is a bit of this shadow or underneath the ground. I'm not so pleased with these ones out in the back. Really not so pleased with them out in the back, but you know what, doesn't matter, I'll just leave them. It's not going to make a big difference. You know, I kind of see in the distance there are some umbrellas. Weirdly enough, there's like a couple of these little umbrellas here, kind of from restaurants or something like that. Sometimes you see these rectangular little marks like that for the signboards of the buildings. All this stuff here, it's kind of, it definitely gets a little bit full on this right hand side, because it's just all smoke and, I was going to say smoke and mirrors, but it's all just basically smoke. And you can see parts of the building, and here it's really, I'm just going to make this one big like shape that goes through, and we've got some windows here. Look, these windows kind of reflect the sky in there as well. There's another sign here, you know, another sign here. I want to put in a person maybe just walking across the road like this, just behind that cab. Okay, maybe they're just waiting for this cab to walk past. I've put them in the wrong place. So always remember, this is something I have to always being careful of, but you want to make the heads of the figures roughly on the horizon line. Now, because we've got this cab in at the front, we just want to make the figure a bit taller than the cab. Okay, maybe like here. Okay, there we go. There we have it. And we've got a figure maybe just coming into the scene to the right. And this can help me also to get in a little reflection of the figure down below. So yeah, something interesting. We got these perspective lines maybe running into the distance like this. Okay, and what I do is that I pick a spot on the horizon line, like a dot. Just put a little dot there, and then I'll just basically draw the lines going towards that particular dot. And you know, over here as well, I'm thinking to myself, I want something more here. I want some, like a person, a figure or something like that. There's just kind of almost a void of information here. You know, there's also this, like, I don't like this writing actually, to be honest, but I might put some of it in later just to keep the ground looking a bit more interesting. Well, we've got people, as you can see here, just kind of walking around in the distance. Okay, a couple of people going in for work or something like that. But you know, the big thing is, yeah, using this space. Do I want to even bother with that? Do I want to even bother with that space? I can put maybe a person in here. Yeah. Decisions. Put someone else, another figure in the background. You could get away with this, really, guys. You can get away with this, but I'm struggling to find a place to put in these people, because I don't want to upset the reflections as well. I hope these kind of tutorials, the way that I go through my thinking process, also actually helps you out as well, because I find a lot of the time, a lot of artists will have this all planned out and they make it look so easy, but in reality, they're spending time, like what I'm doing here, making these decisions. And if you can make them on the go like I'm doing, it's going to make life a lot easier for you. But hopefully, you know, the explanation of that's better. So look, I'll put a figure here in a general focal point, and this way I can get in some kind of reflection of the figure there in the ground. So this is I think this is gonna do for the reference. Okay, the only thing I might want to just emphasize is this cab and a bit of the darker line work, because I don't want this cab to disappear off and into all this wet and just end up becoming a mess. I want there to be some semblance of it left. Oops. Okay. Good. Okay. Alrighty, everyone. So that's basically it. Let's go ahead and get started with the painting. And if you're here and you're new today, let me know down in the chats whereabouts you're watching from, and basically yeah, how you're finding watercolors at the moment. Are you just starting out in watercolors? Have you been painting for a while? Are you struggling with anything in particular? Let me know. And remember to like the video as well. It really helps me to get out to more people. Rana says it's 9 a.m. Saturday. That's awesome. You must be in Perth. No, yeah, you must be in Perth or something, eh? 9 a.m. Yeah, Perth's about 3 hours behind. Okay, so let's get in some of these colors, everyone. And for this sky, you know, we want it to be very, very light. We want it to be very, very light. So I'm just thinking to myself, just get the buildings in first of the sky. I reckon what we'll do is get the let's get the buildings in first. So I'm going to mix up a few different values. Let me just turn that light on a bit more so that you can see what's actually going on. And check the camera's focused. All right, camera's all focused. Okay, so the buildings, and I'm going to pick up some different colors. I'm going to mix up some grayish color. So blue, bit of red, bit of yellow. So I've just got myself a combination of red, perylene red, bit of blue, perylene red, and a bit of Hansa yellow, to try to mix myself up some kind of a grayish color, grayish brown color, hopefully. Okay. Now this building over in the background there's more yellow in it, sort of yellow ochre. So I'm going to drop in some of that yellow ochre out the back like that. I'm using just a normal mop brush. Okay, remember I'm also painting on hot press paper, which makes it very difficult to get in those wet effects. So I don't recommend using hot press unless you've been painting for a while. Use something like cold press. That's going to be a lot easier for you. There, look, the side of that building, and the aim here really for me is just to get in some basic kind of marks on the page to indicate these buildings. Okay, and I want this all to be wet and just very, very fluid. So I'm using a larger brush for that reason, and trying to paint in broader brush strokes, encouraging the colors to mix together a bit. Okay, look at that. This building to the left, I'm using a lot more blue in it to get more of that that contrast in there. Okay, I'm going to leave it down the bottom here for a second. Buildings here to the right. Now we've got a section to this side of the building that's actually lighter, so I'm going to go a touch lighter here. Okay, always try to focus on the values in the scene. Okay, rather than looking at the shapes, well, not the shapes, but the actual subject itself, and think that's a building. Try to look at what, whether a shape is lighter or darker, and that's really going to help. So this is all at the moment. We're using a combination of wet and wet and wet on dry. So wet on dry is this part here, where you can see the paint just forms a crisp line. Okay, a crisp sort of line. And wet and wet is this sort of stuff here, where I'm dropping in paint. Check this out. Just dropping in bits of paint here and there. And this is going into the already wet area and creating some mixtures. Okay, it's uncontrolled, and often for beginners, they find it pretty scary to do this because you're kind of just winging it in a way. But at the same time, because we have a bit of a process going on here, we're painting more the lighter sort of areas. And this is funny because in this scene, there's not really many lighter areas. Okay. But these windows there, kind of a bit of blue to reflect the sky again. I'm trying to find just larger shapes in this scene and to simplify it all down. Okay, we've got, of course, all this like smoke here, but I'm gonna try to get that in a bit later. Okay, for the time being, I want to keep this area very kind of wet, lots of paint flowing in here. As we move down to the bottom part of the scene as well, I always like to add in a touch more paint because it just helps to add more. Just kind of helps to ground the buildings. I don't know how to describe it, but cutting around these figures and of course the taxi as well. Okay, and check this out. The paint just sort of flows nicely through. Okay, but up the top here, you might think, let's drop in some more darker paint. Okay, a bit more darker paint, bit of using again my three primaries: purple, not purple, blue, ultramarine blue, bit of perylene red, and a bit of yellow, Hansa yellow, and that can get me in some of these darker values, hopefully, and paint these in all wet into wet like that. Okay, and I'm just working in this detail, guys, and always think to yourself as well, where's the light, where's the shadows? And on the right side of the building, you can see here there are some definite darker areas, so I can just go ahead and just keep dropping in some of this color here on the right hand side. Okay, and this will create a sharper kind of bit of line work, I guess. All right, but look at all that paint just sort of moving its way through and doing its thing like that. Okay, we'll probably have to go through with a second wash later, but let's do the sky now. Let's do this all in one go. I've got some little bit of this, whatchamacallit, cerulean blue. Got some cerulean blue. I'm mixing this down with a bit of leftover paint to try to create a grayish color for the sky. Maybe a bit of lavender in there as well, like that. Okay, just a kind of a weird grayish color, but it's still, it's still got a bluish undertone to it. And I'm keeping this very light. It's pretty much, you want to keep this the lightest area of the painting. Okay, so you're only using about 5 to 10% of paint, if anything. Okay, look at that. Some of that paint is starting to mix into the sky. That doesn't matter. Okay, we're going to move downwards here, and I'm going to put in that same sort of sky color, but in the ground like this. Okay. And, you can get it in a few areas like here, just anywhere that you could think you could see maybe a bit of the light peeking through. Okay. Like that. Good. And we're going to do all these reflections, hopefully, in one big, I've got this flat brush here as well. A lot of this, like I said, it's all painted wet into wet. I just want to shift some of this paint around as well at the top, let it do its thing. Now, into these cars, we're going to put in a little bit of, a little bit of color. But before we do that, I just want to make sure I've got enough light here in the ground. Now, keep reminding myself, where's the light coming from? Well, it's coming from the sky, so it's mainly like here, bit here, but there's also light coming from, like, reflecting off the buildings. Like, there's a sign board there that's reflecting a bit of light onto the ground too, but there's not much light really in this back section. Okay, now little brush here, just a tiny little round brush, and I'm going to go through and let's put in some really vibrant colors. This is yellow, just a bit of yellow. Okay, really bright yellow, Hansa yellow. Okay, for this section of the vehicle, like that. Okay, because it's just this really bright yellow color. I don't want to miss out on that. Okay, and the top of this has kind of like a bit of a color there as well, a bit of a lighter color. Okay, we've got all this stuff just pooling in the background, and this is the issue with when you're using a lot of these, when you're using whatchamacallit, hot press paper, the colors just pool a lot. Okay, now coming down into the ground, we want to just start putting in some of these reflections. I'm going to grab darker paint, bit of blue, bit of red, and a bit of yellow again. And let's just do this all at once. Oops, that's too browny. I just want some more blue in there, a bit more blue. Okay, let's try this color. All right, so what I'm doing is that I'm using a really dark color, but I'm also making sure that I'm cutting around these bits of reflections here, these bits of, like, as you can see, the light showing through. Okay, and just get this in relatively quickly, like this. Okay, it's kind of tricky to do this because there's so much, the paint just dries so quickly on this paper. Bottom of the vehicles as well, like a little bit of darkness can help, like this, there. Yep, especially with this cab, especially with that cab, I want to emphasize that more. Okay, downwards, look at that, just blend this downwards like that. Okay, so you've got some quick little reflections on the ground. Okay, as we get all the way to the front of the scene, you'll find that it just becomes, yeah, a little bit more, a little bit darker in areas. And we've also got the figures, the people running around in the background, that kind of thing. I really do think that I can do with darkening some of these buildings as well. They're not dark enough, but I want to make sure that this paper is slightly dried before I go into that second wash. I'm picking up just some of this paint with my brush. Okay, just picking up some of it because it's puddling, sort of pooling in these areas. Don't like that. So it's going to take too long to dry. Okay, let's have a look what's going on here on the right hand side. Again, with these vehicles here, there's again a little bit of a darker shadow underneath that I'm just popped in a bit of neutral tint, and that's, again, that just already indicates where those cars are. And we can do it here a bit more on this one as well. It's hit and miss because you're also playing around with the other colors that are blending in and melting into it, so you have to be careful that you're not obliterating the yellow, the vehicle itself. Okay, it still looks like a car. Oh, what am I doing? Doesn't matter. All right, now let's put in a bit of cars. There's a bit of darkness on the windscreen. I'm going to put in a bit of neutral tint and a bit of blue here for the windscreen. This is important, and hopefully the rest of that yellow is mostly dried. Okay, just a quick little thing like that. Yeah. Let's have a look. How's it? Sort of looks like a car. Okay, this window here as well to the left side of the car. Color a bit of that in. Yeah, like this. There we go. Good. And might be able to drop in a bit of red or something for the tail lights like this. Yellow, bit of yellow and red just mixed together there. The back end of the car, and if I can do this as well, just pick up a bit of red, yellow, and orange, and I'm just going to drop some of this into the ground while it's wet to indicate the reflections. It doesn't always work, but you just want to, if you're going to imply this, you want to make this all kind of wet into wet like that. Okay, and wet into wet technique is so fun, but it's yeah, like I said before, for a lot of beginners it's quite stressful, but you have to just experiment around and give it a try. That's the only way that you're going to learn how to do it. Now, the left side of the car, I was actually right to go in there before, just with a little bit of darker paint, because you can see there's actually a bit of a darkness to the left side of the car, just underneath, near the wheels. So we'll just go something like that. Something like that will be okay. And at the back as well, there's some little shadows and things. It makes sense when you're doing it with these shapes, these cars and things that are closer to the back of the scene, because you really need to put in a bit more detail to make these cars and shapes come out of the woodwork. Okay, a bit of that reflection. It went okay. It's kind of a bit too. Maybe I put a bit more orange or something in there. It doesn't look bright enough, but you get the idea. Something like that. Okay. This will blend and create a bit of a mess, hopefully, but still look like the reflection of the tail lights. And I'm constantly adjusting this as well. You know, underneath we can just put in maybe a bit of darker paint around the edges of it, like here. All right, these figures as well. We can cut around these figures a touch. The figures do have their own little sharper reflection too. Same with maybe some of these cars here in the distance. I can just put in a little bit more darkness underneath the cars there to add a bit more volume to the reflection, a bit more darkness to the reflection. I mean, okay. But what I really like is all these other colors that are mixing on the paper and doing its own thing. Okay, and we've got these figures here. Look, there's a figure here. I'm going to just pick up a bit of darker black paint and put in the legs of this figure, like this, kind of walking across. Okay, and let's get in this reflection running down the page like that. Just a bit of darker color. Okay. Okay, that one's a little bit tricky to do. Doesn't matter. I don't want to get rid of all that light as well. It's yeah, maybe a bit of water at the base just to soften that a touch. A bit more water. There you go. That looks better. But as long as there's a bit of a sharper reflection there, I quite like that. Just something different. And right hand side, we've got the legs of this figure here. Okay, legs of the figure on the right. And darker paint, this is just really just pure neutral tint like this. A bit of blue in there as well. Okay, and I'm just going to bring that reflection down the page like this. Okay, nothing too complicated. Bit more water here. There we go. So we've got a bit of reflection for this figure up the top to the top right. Okay, so I think the cars and everything like that is starting to take form, starting to look okay. I'm going to work on these other cars out in the distance, and because they actually have a bit of, there's something in there as well for them. There's just a bit of blue or some color. I want to make sure I get in some of this stuff, some of this lighter color for these cars all the way out in the distance. Okay, like that. They don't really look like cars at the moment, but yeah. So I'm moving my way up the painting now, and I'm trying to work my way back into this wet area of these buildings, because we've got so much of this, like these darker areas here, but at the same time, I don't want to eliminate all this beautiful kind of wash that's in there, but I do want to emphasize a bit more sharpness on the cab, the edges of the cab. Okay, something like that. There is darkness beyond this, near this building as well. Here, I'm just picking up a lot of darker paint, dropping that in here near the umbrella. Look, and just as soon as you hit the umbrella, you just stop. Okay, like that. All right. What else do we have? You know, this sign is, as you can see here, it's this signboard, and I'll just get rid of this little mark. Touch of that there. This signboard, it's darker, so I want to imply some of this stuff. I don't have, there isn't really any like warmer colors here, so I just thought let's put in a splash of red, just for fun. Maybe I can get a bit of that reflecting downwards like this. Okay. Too much. Damn it. Doesn't matter. This is all, when you're working wet into wet, it's kind of exciting, but also frustrating, because you often don't know exactly what's going to happen. Oops. I had this other brush before. Where is it? Yeah, the smaller brush. Okay, let's move our way up into the top of this scene with more ultramarine blue. Okay, up here. And this is that part of that scene that I was telling you about, where we just need to create a bit of sharpness on this building, but at the same time leave parts of this previous wash, because it's going to help to imply like the details of the buildings, like the little windows. See, just leaving some of that stuff. I'm not even bothering too much with the detail, just a bit here and there. Okay, because it needs a second wash. It's just too weak here on that right hand side. I need more darkness, and then we can put in some of this smoke. And how am I going to put in this smoke, you might ask? Well, we're going to use some gouache, some white gouache. One thing I'm trying to do is put in a bit more contrast for these figures. That's not in the reference, but a little bit of contrast would be good. Geez, I'm using this large flat brush for everything. It just goes to show you don't really need a million and one brushes to get the job done, if you're careful. In fact, using larger brushes is something I prefer. It just stops me from overthinking things. Okay, oh, there we go. That's another window there. Okay, so I'm going to start putting in around the edges. It's tricky. This hot press paper, for some reason, all the dark colors just dry like significantly lighter. It's because it doesn't seem to absorb into the fibers of the paper so well. So I'm going over the top of this, doing something. Yeah, good. So some of this smoky kind of color, I'm going to pick up some gouache, tiny bit of white gouache, and oh, there's a few questions here. I better answer some of these questions and let this thing dry for a touch. Okay. Cubs Win is asking, why do you use round brushes? Round brushes are good to get in small details, tiny little details. So, for example, this is like a little round brush, so it has a sharp tip on the end. So it's yeah, basically ideal for getting in like legs of figures. If you're looking at getting in like smaller details, sharper lines, crisper lines. But if you've got these mop brushes, you can still do it as well, but the brush strokes are quite broad, so it's hard to detail in small areas. Flat brushes are kind of, I use these to get in sharp edges, so you see on the sides of the buildings, it just makes it a bit easier to get in that effect. But you can achieve the exact same thing with a normal mop brush, yeah, as well. Okay, so I'm going to pick up one of my smaller mop brushes. Let's get some of this gouache, some of this white gouache in here. And again, this is all just wet work, guys. So dropping in that white gouache into this section, and I'm creating a bit of this smoky effect. Okay. Moving that around a touch, that, and letting the paint just move on its own so that it creates this smokiness by itself. Okay. Right. And I'm pretty sure this will dry lighter as well. I always find with the gouache, it tends to just dry very light. But the paint will diffuse and spread into areas of the painting, of the areas by itself, so you don't really need to bother too much. There's even some up the top here. You can see there's a little bit of like smoky sort of area up here. Just try to get some of that in like that, and dull that area down a little to look like clouds. So yeah, this isn't the usual way that I paint. I'd say I'm a lot more controlled, even though I paint in a loose style. But this is so much fun. This is so much fun just seeing what's going to happen. And at the end of this as well, adding in all the little details. Okay. Also lift off a bit of paint like that. It gets a bit much. Okay. Some more gouache in there. I need a bit more white. Just bring out some of this lighter sort of smoke in the area. Just let it spread around and do its thing. Okay. Now the figures, the figures in the cars and everything like that, they are starting to dry off, which is good news. This means that we can continue to work on these while this top layer dries and turns into something, hopefully something good. But there's a point where you just have to kind of leave it, otherwise you'll just be mucking around in that area forever. And she's asking some questions here. What do you do about blooms? Blooms in this particular scene, look, I mean, I just leave them unless they're really obvious, like a really large bloom. Yeah, I don't really bother too much with them. But in other scenes, if you've just got too much going on, I just grab a tissue paper and dab the bit of paper, and you can actually remove that bloom yourself. So, yeah. Fantastic. Let's see, what else do we have left to do? Really, it's just detailing, tiny bits of detailing. So, and is the wash from the explosion or the building about to break down on top of the car? Um, yeah, look, hopefully it dries off a little bit. Hopefully it dries off a little bit better. But it's meant to be kind of like a smoky sort of effect up the top there. The cars. Now, sharpness in this next step is really important. Okay, so I'm picking up like a smaller round brush and darker paint. And I'm finding just details that I can emphasize on the car. So like the edges of the windscreen, for example, and these windows, you know, just a little something like that to bring them out, bring the details out more. Okay. Here as well, maybe. There we are. Join that on a bit like that. This bit here, this kind of bottom part of the vehicle. There's some area of the boot. Doesn't need to really, don't really need to do too much, but the wheels especially, I think the wheels just need to be darkened a touch. Bring them out a bit more. Okay, that. Had like this person, maybe a bit of blue for this person here to the right. That shirt, a bit of blue shirt for this one here behind as well. There. Okay. If I were to do this again, I'd probably just use cold press paper. Be a lot easier. Bit of yellow for maybe some of these umbrellas and stuff out the back. Don't know what. Something like that. Something quick. Okay. And the cars. Maybe just darken off a touch near the base. Like that. Okay. Really at this point I'm just trying to bring out some little contrast and things, not bothering much with the details, but having some light and dark areas, especially here in the background. We've got some more figures that are kind of walking around, and I just want to put in some extra darks here to emphasize other figures. Other people might be like, you know, kind of walking around out the back, and their little reflections underneath as well, like this. Okay, maybe another one here behind, and there's actually a car here. Maybe I could just get an indication of that car, the base of it like that, and put in a person as well, figure like this, again in the distance. So I've got this main one here in the front though. Okay. Another person. Maybe we could put another person here. Walking into the scene. Okay. Bit of the reflection on the ground as well. Just drag that. Oops. Drag that down a touch. Okay. Really at this point, it's kind of like the tidying up part of the painting. So I'm just trying to pick out areas that I maybe want to emphasize details, and once I dry it off as well, I'll put in another wash on top and see how we go. This building out the back, sort of basic thing. I'll just leave that. Let's give this a little dry and see how it goes. Okay, but bit of red for the faces as well. Just dropping a bit of red like that. can help. I'm going to give it a little dry. Angie's asking, is that a flat or liner brush? I'm guessing line on car and tires. Yeah, so just a little synthetic round brush for the small details, Angie. Okay. Before I do, just forgot to get in maybe a bit of yellow up here. And part of the cab like that. Okay. Good. Let's give it a quick try. Oh, sorry. I didn't activate the microphone before. Okay. Right. So, how are we all doing? I still see a bunch of you on Facebook and on YouTube as well. Um, yeah, let me know if the audio is going okay, guys, because I think there was some issues with the audio just before. Does that at times. So I just accidentally muted it. Yeah, let me know how you're going. Can you hear me okay? All right. I want to put in a bit more darkness on the left-hand side of the car here. Just another layer of that. Again, like that, underneath the car as well there. Good. Audio's good. Okay, thanks, Vivian. Yeah, one thing I want to bring out more is probably the Yeah, just the outline of this cab and maybe the front of the cab as well. Okay, so yeah, gouache. Gouache is your friend. Gouache is your friend. But again, this kind of what I'm deciding is whether I'm putting in some of these like street, you know, these lamps and stuff. So this could be, you know, like a pole or something there. Look, just a quick something like that for light. You might have one maybe coming through here, but just disappearing at the top. I don't know. I'm just kind of making some of this up as it goes. Okay, but I think it just makes the scene look a bit more interesting because we've got all this these like softer shapes, softer, you know, what you call it, smoky shapes and stuff like that. And yeah, this is just going to give it a bit more, yeah, kind of break up that sharpness in there a touch. Okay, and what else do we have? We might have another one here. Look, there is a traffic light here. You need traffic lights if it's a street scene. Just something quick like that. It's nothing special. There's more of these lampposts. You know, just draw them in with the brush. Try to do them with slightly broken edges like that as well. I find that helps to indicate maybe a bit of light hitting them and stuff like that. Would have been good if I get, or I can still do it, but just a little bit of darker value here. The base of that building, there should be a little bit of dark value there for the this building in front. Okay, you can still go over the top and do stuff like this if you want. Not too much, Darren. Okay. Good. All right. What else do we have? Well, you know, like I said before, these tires could do with a bit of extra work here. You know, but I don't want to overdo it as well. What else do we have? This figure here. Maybe I can get make him look like he's wearing a suit or something. See, with the jacket, put on the suit jacket like that. There. Yeah, I like that car, how it kind of just sticks out actually. Like, just left that light there. Okay, another street lamp all the way out in the distance, something quick like that. I know the buildings have all kinds of stuff on them, like little windows and things. I reckon I might just leave it. I don't want to ruin the nice silhouette that the building is making right now. It's a sort of nice car silhouette. Okay. A couple of figures here in the front. Just bring out the legs of that figure a little bit more. This one here perhaps as well. Just using just really dark paints, just neutral tint. Neutral tint. Okay. Which is basically black. Okay. Really dark colors, so I can just really bring out these figures, bring them out a touch more. And Angie's asking, is the tire going flat? Two guys behind the car pushing it in the rain. Yeah, look, that could be the story. That could definitely be the story. I think these figures, always having like figures in here just helps. These people could know each other, like you said, Angie. Who knows? Have the arm out like that. I'm not too happy with this car, to be honest with you guys. Like, I could think that it could be a bit, it could have been blended a bit better into the background. See how this sharpness of the top of it, see, I like that, but under the rest of it, it's just kind of hit and miss here, especially the front of it. But I hope we can bring it back just with a bit of gouache, tiny bit of white gouache again. but I like to mix in a touch of yellow for this particular scene because, yeah, we've got this car here. So I think a bit of yellow in there might help. A bit of white gouache and yellow. See if I can bring back some of this cab. More yellow. It's tricky, but that's the front of it as well. You know, like there's actually a bit more hanging out the front of this cab, like this, something like that, maybe. Okay. More of this gouache. Preferably I get some white gouache for some other areas as well for the figures. It just helps them to stick out better. Pick up a clean brush. All my brushes just have all kinds of paints in it, so it's getting out of hand. A little bit of sparkle here and there for the tops of these cars and the people. A bit of the head and the shoulder. Can help bring out the figures a bit more, like this. Have it. Just a bit of white gouache on the heads and the shoulders of them. And that's what I mean by these finishing touches. They will bring a sense of sharpness into parts of this scene. A bit of sharpness into the scene that is really needed, I think. This one's not completely dry yet. Let me just try. Light on the head, a bit of light on the shoulders like this. This person, here. Here. Okay. And the lamps as well, maybe a bit of light just reflecting off some parts of it, like this. Okay. Some of these guiding lines have disappeared. I'm gonna just pick up this gouache, bit of gouache, and see if I can just do something like this. Oh. Get some of this, like, these guiding lines to return here. Damn, it's not straight. Let me see if I can just remove some of that. Try once more. Don't worry. This dry off this brush would be better actually. That. Okay. And you've got this, you know, these these bits and pieces on the ground. I don't really, I'm not so keen on doing it, but let's just do it. Only. Kind of makes it look a bit more interesting, I guess. Like, only. Just got to be careful not to go overboard with all this gouache stuff, gouache work. It's only meant to be a finishing touch to all this. All right, I think we're pretty much almost done with this. You know, in terms of like a completed painting, I'm fairly happy with it. It's very loose and there's so much going on. I think I'd like to attempt it again with perhaps, yeah, with a bit of cold press paper instead next time. Okay. How are we all doing? I hope you enjoyed today's workshop. And how did you go today as well? Let me know down in the comments below. And if you're watching along, again, do me a big favor and click the like button if you enjoyed the video today, found it helpful. Click the like button and share it with a friend or a watercolor group that you're part of. Anyone that might be interested in it, that really helps me out. So there we have it. A finished loose kind of street scene. I kind of like it better than the reference photo. The only thing that I reckon I would have done differently or better is just the car. Just would have detailed that a little bit more accurately. But you know what? Does the trick. Certainly does the trick. And yeah, I'll hang around for a little bit. I know there's some of you that might have a question here or there. But I think we're pretty much it here. But if you're watching along afterwards as well, feel free to ask questions, comment down in the comments. I do have a Patreon as well if you want to go check that out, and if you're enjoying these workshops, you want to support me, there's a link to my Patreon just in the video description. Okay. And basically, you can access the templates, the tracing templates for all of these workshops. And I do have 2 other tiers as well where you can access my premium courses. I've got 10 premium courses for the middle tier and 84 for the top tier. Do have a 70 course program as well, which you can check out. And that's, basically gives you access to about 1,000 different videos. And I mean, if you're serious about watercolors, that's really going to help you out, because I can really go into so much detail with, I go into so much detail with shadows, with talking about, just getting distracted at the moment, but all different types of topics, but in more detail. So I talk about values, for instance, like how to paint different values, and I kind of just touched on them in this workshop here and there, but yeah, with my actual premium courses, I go into them in more detail. And yeah, Angie says liked it, and street scenes and buildings more advanced in my ability, but I like your teaching style and your approach. Thank you, Angie. Glad you liked today's workshop. Okay, I think that's about it. But yeah, check out the links in the description. Like I said, I've got Patreon. I've got that 70 course program that you can enroll in. And I think that's it. I'm going to go grab some lunch. Thank you all for joining, and I'll see you next time.